In the rolling East Texas pine hills some 60 miles north of Houston, rises a rusting, mysterious tower, poking its head just above the 100-foot tall tree canopy. This is the Liberty Hill Fire Tower, but it could be any one of the thousands of abandoned fire towers that dot America's forests. Once instrumental in protecting one of the country's most vital resources, these towers have largely become irrelevant, left to decay as time marched on. So what made thousands of once vital lookout towers a relic? Let's explore the interesting history of these towers, their role in America's past, and find out what exactly made them obsolete. I'm just outside of Cold Spring, Texas, on the edge of the Sam Houston National Forest. The Liberty Hill Fire Tower was completed here in 1955 and actively used for just 14 years, before being largely left to the elements. Fire watchtowers have existed in one form or another for hundreds if not thousands of years, but the presence of prefab metal ones like this is very much a 20th century American phenomenon.
Fire, due chiefly to man's carelessness, ate up thousands upon thousands of acres.
Forestry of the early 20th century was drastically different from what we see today. Fires were seen as unqualified disasters, and the Forest Service policy was full suppression. Following the Great Fire of 1910 that ravaged the Northwest, the 5-year-old U.S. Forest Service was charged with extinguishing all fires by 10 a.m. the day after discovery, and towers played an increasingly critical role in catching small blazes before they turned major. Lookouts, often working in isolation for days or weeks, would scan the horizon for smoke plumes and triangulate fire locations using alidades. The Aeromotor Company in the late 1800s had gained industrial might perfecting the prefabricated steel windmill, which had become modus operandi in rural America, replacing the seemingly primitive wooden windmills that came before. Expanding their empire over the next 20 years, they forayed first into electricity transmission and communication towers, then finally fire lookout towers, with the first models going in the 19-teens. But the towers wouldn't really see their boom until the Great Depression. The Civilian Conservation Corps, initiated under FDR, created jobs programs for young people and veterans to stay productive during the Depression, which in turn provided the government with abundant, affordable labor. This enabled not only the rapid deployment of fire towers, but also their continued operation by trained lookouts. It's also the reason this one exists. Although the tower wasn't completed until 1955, the endless rows of harvestable timber were laid by the CCC. And so the towers went up. Thousands scattered across the country, covering every state but Kansas. This Aeromotor LS-40 was among the most common and sophisticated of the prefab steel towers available. It boasted stairs in lieu of the earlier ladders and was topped by a 7x7 sheet metal and glass cab. The ones in Texas, reportedly over 100 in their heyday, were around 120 feet high, tall enough to poke through the vast East Texas pine canopy. While in other locations, natural topography allowed towers to be shorter, in the relatively flat East Texas forest, the height was essential. So what happened then to make thousands of towers the US had invested heavily in functionally obsolete? In part, what would kill the towers was technology. First, ready access to airplanes, then cameras, then infrared cameras, and more recently, the implementation of drones. All of this allowed fewer people to survey more forest. It was also changes in forest management. Woodland firefighting went from an extinguish at all costs as soon as possible to a managed containment strategy, accompanied by the strategic use of controlled burns to limit the accumulation of underbrush. In addition to reducing the risk of catastrophic fires, controlled burns greatly contribute to forest ecology. And so, since 1969, the Liberty Hill Fire Tower has sat rusting on a prominent point in East Texas. I'm not alone in my intrigue with these structures. The Forest Fire Lookout Association is a nonprofit dedicated to the legacy, preservation, and reuse of historic fire towers. And there are people who work to archive all the towers that remain. Across the state, many of the Aeromotor prefab fire towers still stand. Few, if any, still see use by the Forest Service. Some have been preserved for nostalgia, while more commonly they have taken on a new life as communication towers. More still are abandoned entirely, silent, looming reminders of a different era in American forestry. If you find yourself driving through the rolling forests of East Texas, keep an eye just above the tree line. You just might see a piece of the forest's past.